The wood storage shed we'll be building today measures 8 feet long by 3 feet wide and 6 feet high. While I really enjoy using my Brio fire pit and cooking on it, the thing uses significantly more wood than your typical fire pit. And with how often I like to be by the fire, I need more wood and a dry place to store it. Anyways, let's start with the foundation. A few days before you start the project, you'll want to call 811 if you live in the US to have them come out and mark where there are buried utility cables and lines. We'll only be doing a little bit of digging, but you don't want to hit anything you shouldn't. On this side of my house, there really isn't anything here besides one fiber optic cable for internet. The majority of the buried lines are in my neighbor's yard over there. A complete list of materials I purchased and a cut list of those materials is included in the description and on the blog post. To show you where I'm digging holes and where I'm placing the deck blocks, I've spray painted white circles in those spots. After laying out the blocks on these spots, I spray painted red dots along the corners so I had a better idea of where to dig. We'll start by digging 6 shallow holes for our deck blocks and filling those with gravel. Then we'll place the deck blocks on top. Digging the holes deeper than I'm showing here, then filling with gravel gives you more flexibility in adjusting the height and leveling everything. Take a few of your 2x6s, set them on the deck blocks, and check that everything is level. I decided to use these 2 cinder blocks I had laying around for additional support in the center of the platform. You can use deck blocks or cinder blocks here, it won't make a huge difference. We'll finish assembling the frame by securing the ends with 2 3-inch deck screws into each corner. I'm using a simple cardboard template to mark where to drill the holes for each screw. You will want to drill holes prior to inserting the screw so you don't split the wood. I start with putting the top screw in one side and then the top screw in the other, and then inserting the bottom screws. This gives me some flexibility to ensure the 2x6 is flat and square and reduce crookedness as much as possible. After getting one side done, I flipped the frame over so I didn't have to work in the tight space close to the house. This, unfortunately, was a big oversight later on. Next, I'm measuring diagonally to ensure everything is square. Now, I'll start inserting the 4x4s. I've cut each 4x4 to 6 feet in length, and I'm using a clamp to help hold them in place while I insert the lag screws. I'm using the same cardboard template to roughly line up where each screw should go. These 4x4s will rest in the center cutout of each deck block. Here's where I overlooked a crucial step that added some significant time to the project. As you can see, I have about 6 inches or less of space to work with between the house and the shed. I luckily have this 90-degree bit adapter that works well with my impact driver so I can get the job done. However, it was far from easy to do it this way. Looking back, it would have been better to assemble the frame off the deck blocks and then attach the 4x4s, making sure to account for the depth of the deck block cutouts. Next, I am inserting the platform joists that go around each post. I'm using my cardboard template again, and then placing 2 3-inch deck screws for each. For the middle section, I inserted a scrap 4x4 piece to help align those supports. I'm not pre-drilling any holes here, since the screws are closer to the center of the wood, and there's a pretty low chance anything will split. Same thing as before, I'm starting with the top on each side, then placing the bottom screws, just in case I need to make some adjustments. With the platform complete, we're going to lay down the flooring. First, I'm going to cut out the spaces for the corner post. I made a mark that roughly showed where the sides of the 4x4 were, and then used a scrap piece of a 4x4 to get an idea of the depth. Again, I would recommend making this cutout bigger than you think you'll need, so you have some flexibility in lining the piece up. Don't forget, for that rear piece, you'll need to make a cutout for the center post. Using 3-inch deck screws, screw down the front and rear, being careful not to break off the ends like I did on the front right side. Insert a screw into each crossing support. Save a few of those quarter circle scrap pieces as we're going to use those for spacing. Take those scrap pieces and place them in between the corner post and your next floor piece. Screw this piece down and then move the scrap pieces to the rear side to line up that piece. These scrap pieces will not line up perfectly for the entire depth of the flooring. However, they will line it up enough on the ends that I am able to eyeball the distance as I'm working my way to the center. With the flooring complete, we'll work on attaching the sides. I'm using Cedar fence pickets. They're cheap, lightweight, and rot and insect resistant. These are sold in 6-foot lengths, so to cover the backside you'll need to cut them to meet halfway on the middle post. The theoretical measurement comes out to 46.5 inches, but double check yours just to be safe. I started by placing a regular 2x6 on the bottom and using a clamp to hold it in place. Then I sat the cedar planks on top of it while screwing them into position. Then I moved the 2x6 up and repeated the process. I did the same on the side with the cedar plank that also measured the same width. On to attaching the roof. I took these 2x4s that are cut into 3 feet each, marked the center of each, and then using a straight edge, drew a center line across the middle. Then I made a mark that was 1.5 inches in on the center line for each side. I then lined up each of those corner markings up on the 4x4 post and clamped them into place. You can see in this photo, the shaded area should be showing. These markings help make sure everything is lined up correctly and will look even from the sides. After clamping the rear in place, I slowly adjusted the front of them down to create the slope that will allow water to drain off and away from the foundation of the house. I simply tilted the front until the 2x4 was slightly above the post so the roof won't hit it. With the side supports up, now I'll put up the rear and front support. For the front, I thought using a 1x4 would suffice. I was wrong. Use a 2x4. You'll see why here shortly. I started by clamping the 1x4 to each of the corner posts, then pre-drilling before attaching the screws. Unfortunately, something went out of square somewhere. You can see that the front is slightly wider than the base, and maybe it was the wood, maybe the ground shifted, or maybe it was me. I'm not sure at this point, but for me, it didn't have to look perfect. It's storing firewood. For the rear, I lined up a 2x4 to be even with the sides and clamped this to the center post while I screwed it down. I then placed screws through the side supports at an angle to help keep the rear support lined up. This will not be a weight-bearing roof, so I'm not too concerned with strength here. It only needs to be able to stand up to some rain and a little bit of wind. These pieces of sheet metal roofing come in 3 feet by 8 foot sections. so I needed to cut 2 pieces in half to get them to fit and allow for some overhang. I used my jigsaw with a metal cutting blade and then cut these down to size. You'll want to put some scrap pieces of wood alongside your cut so the metal doesn't shake and move as much. After cutting the sheet metal, it's a matter of lining them and their seams up on the top of the shed. I started with putting screws on the corners first, and then working my way inside. The screws I'm using here are self-tapping and have a washer attached to them. No pre-drilling needed, and the washer will help prevent water from coming through the hole. Ultimately, I decided I wanted to attach the sheet metal to the front support, and a 1x4 wasn't going to cut it. This is why I said earlier to use a 2x4 here. I took a few 2x4 scrap pieces and drilled them into the 1x4 so the roofing screws would have something to bite into. Now it's time to load it up. The wood I bought is already seasoned, so I'm stacking one right on top of the other, rather than using the log cabin style of stacking. If this wood was still green, I would probably opt to use the log cabin style since it allows for more air to flow through. And that's it! Your firewood storage shed is complete. Like I mentioned earlier, links to all the materials, cut list, and even the fire pit I use are linked in the description below. Detailed pictures can be found on my website. And if you're interested in another project, check out the video I did for this fire pit table. Perfect for keeping kids and pets safely away from the fire pit. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button below and consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.